The oil giant Shell has always denied claims of being complicit in grave human rights abuses in Nigeria. But Channel 4 News has now obtained copies of court documents showing how the Anglo-Dutch company enlisted the help of Nigeria's former military regime to deal with protesters. Shell has just agreed a £10 million out-of-court settlement 14 years after 9 protesters, including the author Saro-Wiwa, were hanged by the Nigerian government. The court case in the United States was brought by relatives of the men. Shell said it played no part in the violence and was paying the settlement money as a humanitarian gesture. Sue Turton reports.
Indigenous people have been cheated.
Saro-Wiwa's fight against an oil giant cast him as a lion of Africa. One man fighting against the might of a multinational. He lost that fight and his life, executed by the state. His protest silenced by the military dictator. Over a decade on, recognition for Saro-Wiwa and his followers in the form of £9.5 million. Although Shell deny this an admission of culpability in their deaths.
No company that is innocent of any involvement with the Nigerian military and human rights abuses would settle out of court for $15.5 million. It clearly shows that they have something to hide.
Shell's operation in Nigeria is one of its key production lines, but the country has been ruled by a number of military dictators who the company has had to do business with. Saro-Wiwa had mobilised his Ogoni people against the environmental destruction they claimed Shell's vast operations had caused, and against the military regime's failure to pass on any of the benefits of the region's oil. After the campaigners' deaths, their families had waged a 13-year campaign. With no international court to turn to, they found an obscure American law from 1789 that allowed them to take Shell to a federal court in New York, accusing the company of human rights abuses connected with their deaths. Channel 4 News has obtained court documents that would have been used by the plaintiffs that allegedly detail how much Shell was involved in the Nigerian clampdown on the Ogoni people and their protest movement. In 1990, Shell sent this letter to a Nigerian police commissioner requesting Mobil's services. After expressing concerns of an impending attack by the local community, Shell's divisional manager wrote, "We request that you urgently provide us with security protection, preferably mobile police force at this location." Shell denied they knew of Mobil's brutality, but they'd used their services 3 years earlier to police a peaceful protest. 2 civilians were killed and 40 houses destroyed. By 1992, Saro-Wiwa's protests were gaining momentum, but the military regime was determined to stop him. They arrested him, locking him up for months. The next year, 300,000 Ogoni people took to the streets, over half their number, marching through their towns and villages in protest. But a clampdown was on the way. President Sani Abacha came to power, the country's most brutal leader. The government sent troops into the Ogoni region. One policeman stationed at the entrance to one Shell terminal in 1993 said in a deposition that the army had arrived one night. A soldier had spoken to him. He told me that they were going to Ogoni. The policeman had also seen armed mobile police at the terminal, arriving on board the oil company's own transport. The Mobil arrived through Shell helicopter. By then, Shell was working side by side with Abacha's government. In August, an account of a series of meetings held between Sir Philip Watts, the then managing director of Shell Nigeria, the interim president of Nigeria, the inspector of police and the head of state security, was sent to Shell's office in London and The Hague. It stated police reinforcements have been ordered and troops would be sent in if necessary. The following year, Saro-Wiwa was again arrested and imprisoned. Another fax then from the head of Shell Nigeria to colleagues in London admitted that the use of local security impinges on our no military protection stance. Another deposition, this time given by a fisherman, explained how in 1994 he was stopped by what he called Shell police, who'd asked if he and his friends were Ogoni people. We answered, yes, we are Ogoni. We thought there was a message for Ogoni people. As soon as we accepted that we were Ogoni, they battened me. The following year, Saro-Wiwa and 8 other Ogoni leaders are put on trial. The military regime charges them with incitement to murder over the deaths of 4 other leaders and quickly finds them guilty. They are all hanged on the 10th of November. 5 days later, the chairman of Shell's managing directors wrote to Prime Minister John Major. The project will make a major contribution to environmental improvement in the region and is expected to bring important benefits to the local community. Shell has been accused of being in collusion with the military. We emphatically deny such charges. We do not wish for military presence to maintain operations.
Well, despite all the denials throughout the years, Shell were working in partnership with the Nigerian military, people who they knew could commit human rights abuses. They armed, transported and paid the Nigerian military in the full knowledge that they could go on and commit human rights abuses. It was happening right under Shell's nose and they helped it to happen.
Shell today made it clear the settlement was a humanitarian gesture to set up a trust fund to benefit the Ogoni people.
Shell has always maintained the allegations were false. While we were prepared to go to court to clear our name, we believe the right way forward is to focus on the future for Ogoni people, which is important for peace and stability in the region.
Today, the Niger Delta is riven by conflict and polluted by the oil that should be its lifeblood. But 20 years on, a semblance of recognition for the men who first protested against the desperate injustice and paid with their lives.
Sue Turton reporting where we did ask for an interview with Shell tonight, but they declined to put anyone up. Joining us now from New York is Judith Chomsky, a lawyer with the Center for Constitutional Rights, who brought the case on behalf of the plaintiffs. Judith Chomsky, was there not a good chance that if you pushed further and went on with the case, you might actually have won a very much more significant payout?
Well, there's always the possibility of a larger award from a jury, but the settlement gives the plaintiffs 2 things. It gives them finality and it gives them certainty. If we had gone to trial, if we were successful in front of a jury, Shell could have continued the litigation for years through processes of appeals and reconsiderations and various motions. This has been 13 years. It weighed heavy on the plaintiffs, and it was time for us to accept a settlement that is very beneficial to the plaintiffs.
And the nature of the settlement, I mean, does it do what Shell says they hope it will do, lead in some way to a more peaceful resolution of this issue on the ground in the Delta region, do you think? I mean, what are the prospects?
Well, this was a case between 10 individuals and Shell. The issues between Shell and the Ogoni people are all still there. They're all unresolved, and Shell must take steps to reconcile with the Ogoni people. Nothing is settled by this case except the 10 individual cases.
Now, understandably, the Saro-Wiwa family don't want really to have to go on talking for themselves. But what's your sense of their feeling now that this issue has ended in this way?
Well, as you know, 2 members of the Saro-Wiwa family were plaintiffs in this case. Ken Wiwa, the son of the slain leader Ken Saro-Wiwa, and Dr. Owens Wiwa, his brother. All of the plaintiffs discussed the settlement. They all voted for this settlement. I believe it was a unanimous decision to take this settlement. And I think the Saro-Wiwa family is simply exhausted from the strain of carrying the wonderful but heavy burden of Ken Saro-Wiwa.
Judith Chomsky, thank you very much indeed for joining us from New York.